The classroom floated somewhere between stars inside a massive station that belonged to no single world. Through the wide windows, a dozen different suns painted the darkness with colors that had no names in any Earth language. Inside the room, 30 young beings from 20 different species sat at desks designed to fit bodies of every imaginable shape. Instructor Velshara stood at the front, her crystalline body catching the starlight and breaking it into rainbows across the walls. She was Zanari, a species known across the galaxy for patience and wisdom. Her voice was soft and musical as she guided her students through a lesson about conflict resolution. When two peoples disagree, she said, gesturing to a holographic display, the first step is always to listen, not to wait for your turn to speak, but to truly hear what the other needs. Most of the students nodded along. Some took notes on devices that hummed or clicked or glowed. A few looked bored, the way young beings of any species often do when adults talk about important things. Cratch was one of the bored ones. He sat near the middle of the room, his thick fur rustling as he shifted in his seat. He was Vrexian, built like the ancient bears of Earth but larger, with intelligent eyes and hands that could grip tools as well as they could tear metal. His people were warriors, proud and strong, and they had only joined the Galactic Concordance 5 years ago. To Cratch and many young Vrexians, all this talk about listening and understanding seemed weak. "Let us practice," Velshara said, her crystalline face forming something like a smile. "Cratch, would you participate in a scenario with me?" Cratch straightened, suddenly alert. "Yes, instructor." "Good, imagine you are a trade negotiator for your people. I represent the Zanari. We have disagreed about the price of stellar crystals. You feel we are asking too much. What do you do?" Cratch stood, his full height impressive even for a juvenile. "I tell you the price is unfair. If you will not lower it, we take our business elsewhere. The Vrexian do not beg." Several students shifted uncomfortably. A small rabbit-like being near the front pulled her ears down flat. Velshara's glow dimmed slightly, a sign of concern among her people. "I see, but what if we cannot lower the price? What if we need that price to feed our own families? Walking away means both our people suffer." "Then you should have thought of that before making unfair demands," Cratch said, his voice growing harder. "Strength respects strength. Weakness invites exploitation." "Cratch," Velshara said gently, "this exercise is about finding solutions where everyone benefits. Your response leaves no room for, 'My response is honest.'" Cratch's fur bristled, rising along his spine. "You ask me to play pretend at negotiation, then tell me I am wrong when I answer as a true Vrexian would? This is the problem with this place. You want to make us all soft. You want to take away what makes us strong." The room went completely silent. Even the students who had been doodling or staring out the windows now focused entirely on the confrontation. Velshara took a step back, her crystalline form flickering between colors. "Cratch, I meant no disrespect to your culture. I am trying to help you learn skills that will. I do not need help from someone who has never fought for anything." Cratch snarled, and the sound was pure animal fury. His lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. His claws extended just slightly, scraping against the desk. The snarl was a deep insult. Among Vrexians, it was a challenge to combat. In the peaceful halls of the academy, it was unthinkable. No student had ever showed such open aggression toward an instructor. Velshara stood frozen. Her kind had no experience with physical violence. They had evolved on a gentle world where conflict meant different colors of light, different frequencies of song. She did not know what to do. Through the open doorway, other instructors were visible in the hallway. They stopped their conversations and turned toward the classroom. A massive Thraxian, built like a living tank, began moving toward the door. A Quillith, delicate as a butterfly but carrying the authority of age, floated closer. They had heard the snarl and recognized danger. Cratch saw them coming. Part of him, the part that was still a child, felt sudden fear. But he had gone too far to back down now. In Vrexian culture, backing down from a challenge meant shame worse than injury. He rose to his full height, towering over the instructor's desk. "I will not apologize for speaking truth," he growled. Some of the smaller students were quietly moving toward the exits. The rabbit-like being was shaking. A student from a species that looked like walking plants had changed color to pale green, a sign of extreme stress. In the back corner of the classroom, a human teenager named Marcus Chen had been watching the entire exchange. He was 16 years old by Earth counting, with dark hair and the kind of lean build that came from years of ranch work. He wore the standard academy uniform, looking small compared to many of his classmates. He had said nothing during the entire class, content to observe and learn. Now he stood up. The movement was not sudden or dramatic. Marcus simply rose from his chair with the calm certainty of someone who had made a decision. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply said one word, and that word cut through the tension like a blade through silk. Sit. It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was a command, spoken in a tone that came from somewhere deep in human evolution, from the days when their ancestors had hunted in packs across dangerous grasslands. It was the voice of a pack leader, absolute and undeniable. Cratch's body obeyed before his mind could process what was happening. His legs folded. He sat down hard in his chair, the metal creaking under his weight. His fur stood on end, every instinct screaming at him, but he could not move. Marcus walked forward slowly. His footsteps were quiet but somehow loud in the silent room. He passed rows of frozen students, past Velshara, who watched with wide, crystalline eyes, until he stood a few feet from Cratch's desk. The human was smaller than the Vrexian. By all physical measures, Cratch could have broken him in half. But something in the way Marcus stood, the way he held himself with perfect balance and complete confidence, triggered ancient warnings in Cratch's predator brain. This was not prey. This was not even competition. This was something that could hunt hunters. Marcus looked at Cratch with dark brown eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. You snarled at an instructor who was trying to help you learn. Cratch tried to speak but found his throat closed. He wanted to stand, to defend his honor, to do anything but sit there like a scolded cub. But he could not move. Marcus tilted his head slightly, the way a wolf might examine something it had cornered. Apologize, the word hung in the air. In the doorway, the Thraxian instructor had stopped moving. The Quilith hovered motionless, antennae quivering. Every being in the room, student and adult alike, waited. Cratch's heart hammered in his chest. His pride warred with something older than pride, something that whispered survival in the back of his mind. He looked at Marcus and saw something that terrified him more than any challenge from his own kind. He saw certainty, complete absolute certainty that the human's command would be obeyed. And beneath that, though Marcus showed no violence, Cratch's instinct screamed that this being could be extraordinarily dangerous if it chose to be. The room held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The silence stretched like pulled wire, thin and ready to snap. Cratch sat in his chair, every muscle in his body locked tight. His claws had retracted without his conscious choice. His breathing came shallow and quick, the way prey breathes when a predator has them cornered. Marcus stood 3 feet away, waiting. He was not threatening. His hands hung relaxed at his sides. His posture was open, not aggressive, but something about him demanded response, the way gravity demands that dropped objects fall. Cratch's mouth was dry, words stuck in his throat. He was a Vrexian, a species that had conquered 12 worlds before joining the Concordance. His ancestors had fought wars that lasted generations. He came from a line of warriors who would die before showing weakness. But right now, every instinct he had told him the same thing. This human was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with size or strength. Cratch's voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. He tried again, forcing the words past his pride. I apologize, Instructor Velshara. The words felt like swallowing broken glass. His face burned with shame. But the moment he said them, the terrible pressure in the room eased just slightly. Marcus nodded once, a small movement that somehow carried approval. Thank you, he said, his voice normal now without that commanding edge. Now we can all learn. He turned and walked back to his seat as if nothing had happened. His footsteps were quiet. He sat down, pulled his desk screen toward him, and resumed taking notes on the lesson. Just like that, it was over. The other student slowly came back to life. The rabbit-like being's ears rose slightly. The plant student shifted back to a healthier green. Whispers started, soft and urgent, as beings processed what they had just witnessed. In the doorway, the instructors exchanged long looks. The Thraxian's small eyes were wide with surprise. The Quilith's wings fluttered in what their species displayed as deep thought. After a moment, they quietly moved away from the door, back to whatever they had been doing before. Velshara stood at the front of the class, her crystalline body cycling through colors that showed confusion, relief, and something else. Wonder, perhaps. She looked at Marcus for a long moment, then at Cratch, then back to her lesson plan. "Well," she said finally, her musical voice only slightly unsteady, "let us continue with the scenario, but perhaps we should discuss how different approaches can lead to different outcomes." The rest of the class passed in a blur. Cratch heard nothing. He sat perfectly still, staring at his desk, his mind spinning. What had just happened? How had a human, smaller and physically weaker than him, made him obey with just one word? He risked a glance at Marcus. The human was focused on the lesson, occasionally making notes, looking completely ordinary. But Cratch could not shake the memory of those eyes, that voice, that absolute certainty. When the class finally ended, students filed out quickly. Most gave both Cratch and Marcus wide space as they passed. The rabbit-like being practically ran for the door. Only a few students approached Marcus, and they did so carefully, respectfully. Cratch remained seated until the room emptied. Velshara approached him slowly, her glow soft and warm. "Are you well, Cratch?" she asked. He could not look at her. "I shamed myself, instructor. I shamed my people." "You made a mistake," Velshara said gently, "but you also corrected it. That takes strength too." "I only corrected it because the human made me," Cratch said bitterly. "I did not choose it." Velshara was quiet for a moment. "Did he make you? Or did he remind you of what you already knew was right?" Cratch had no answer for that. He gathered his things and left, his head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone he passed in the halls. That evening, the senior instructors gathered in a secure conference room deep in the station. Headmaster Quilon presided over the meeting. He was ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species, with scales that had faded to silver and eyes that had seen centuries of history. "We must discuss what occurred today," Quilon said, his voice like wind through old trees. A human student intervened in a potentially violent situation. He did so without permission, without warning, and with complete success. "We need to understand what we witnessed." The Thraxian instructor, whose name was Mordak, spoke first. "I have seen violence in my life. I was moving to restrain young Cratch to prevent harm. But when the human stood, I stopped. I did not choose to stop. My body simply would not continue." "I felt it too," admitted the Quillith called Essence of Morning Dew. "My species has faced predators. We evolved to recognize danger and flee from it. That recognition saved us for millions of years. When that human gave his command, every part of me recognized a predator." Velshara had been quiet until now. "He was not threatening," she said softly. Marcus showed no violence. He did not raise his hand or his voice beyond that first word. Yet somehow everyone in that room knew he could be dangerous if he chose. "How is this possible?" Quilon pulled up files on a holographic display. "Humanity is relatively new to the Concordance. Only 60 standard years. We know the basic facts. They evolved on a world we classify as hostile. Extreme temperature shifts, dangerous weather patterns, limited resources, many predators. By all measures, their planet should have killed them. But it did not," Mordak said. "Instead, it made them." "Yes," Quilon agreed. "Humans evolved as endurance predators. They hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They have forward-facing eyes for tracking, high pain tolerance, the ability to function in extreme conditions, and something else, a pack hierarchy that combines predator instinct with social cooperation." Essence of Morning Dew's antennae quivered. "I have read about this. Humans have what they call a command voice. It is not magic. It is psychology combined with millions of years of evolution. Explain for those of us less familiar," Velshara requested. The Quillith floated closer to the display, pulling up research files. Human packs, like many predator packs, require leadership to function. In dangerous environments, hesitation means death. So they evolved to recognize and respond to authority quickly. When a human uses a certain tone, a certain posture, a certain degree of certainty, it triggers responses in others. "But Cratch is not human," Mordak pointed out. "He should not respond to human pack dynamics." But predator psychology has common roots," Quilon said. "Phyrexians also evolved as pack hunters. So did Thraxians. So did dozens of other species. The specific signals may differ, but the underlying structure is similar. When a confident predator says stop, Other predators recognize it on an instinctive level. Velshara's colors shifted to deep blue, a sign of concern. This seems like a dangerous ability. If humans can simply command others to obey. It is not that simple, Essence of Morning Dew assured her. The effect works best in crisis moments when instinct overrides thought. In calm situations, reason prevails. Also, not all humans carry this authority equally. It depends on confidence, experience, and genuine certainty of purpose. This Marcus, Mordak said thoughtfully. What do we know of him? Quilon pulled up the student's file. Marcus Chen, 16 Earth years old. From a rural region of their planet called Montana. His family raises domesticated animals. He has younger siblings whom he helps care for. Excellent grades. No disciplinary issues. Quiet and observant in classes. He learned authority by managing animals and children, Velshara realized. Not through violence but through necessity and responsibility. Exactly, Quilon said. And here is what concerns me. Marcus has no idea he carries this weight. To him, what he did today was simply stopping a fight the way he might stop a bull from charging, or his brother from doing something dangerous. He does not understand that other species perceive him as inherently dangerous. The room fell quiet as the instructors considered this. Finally, Mordak spoke. Should we tell him? Should we train him to use this ability deliberately, or should we teach him to suppress it? Velshara asked. So he does not accidentally influence others? Headmaster Quilon was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, stars wheeled slowly past. We do neither yet, he said finally. We observe, we learn. This ability could be used for great good or great harm. But first, we must understand it better, and we must see what kind of person young Marcus proves to be. The meeting ended with more questions than answers, but everyone agreed on one thing. The Academy had just discovered something important about humanity, something that could change how the species was perceived across the galaxy. And Marcus Chen, finishing his homework in his small dorm room, had no idea any of it was happening. 3 days after the incident, Cratch still could not sleep properly. He lay in his dormitory bunk, staring at the ceiling while his roommate, a Quilith named Softwing Shadow, made gentle sleeping sounds across the room. Every time Cratch closed his eyes, he saw Marcus standing there, waiting with infinite patience for an apology. The shame burned like acid. Not just shame for snarling at Instructor Velshara, though that was bad enough. The deeper shame was that he had backed down. A Vrexian warrior did not submit to anyone smaller and weaker, yet he had done exactly that, except Marcus was not weaker. Cratch's instincts had recognized something his pride refused to accept. The human was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with muscle or claws. During meals, Cratch saw Marcus in the dining hall. The human sat with a few other students, eating and talking quietly. He never looked threatening. He laughed at jokes. He helped a small student reach food on a high shelf. He seemed completely ordinary, but now Cratch could not unsee what he had glimpsed. The way other students gave Marcus slightly more space than they gave each other. The way even some of the larger, stronger species did not bump into him in crowded hallways, as if everyone unconsciously recognized something about the human. On the 4th day, Cratch finally spoke to Softwing Shadow about it. The Quilith were gentle philosophers, good at listening and thinking deeply about problems. I do not understand what happened, Cratch admitted, his voice low. The human is small, weak, I could break him with one hand. Yet when he told me to sit, I could not disobey. What is wrong with me? Softwing Shadow's wings fluttered softly, creating patterns in the air that expressed sympathy. Nothing is wrong with you, friend. You responded to something real, but what? He did not threaten me. He did not even touch me. Humans carry a weight, the Quilith said thoughtfully. My people have studied them since they joined the Concordance. They evolved on a terrible world, Cratch, a world that should have killed them 1,000 times over. But instead of dying, they became the most dangerous thing on their planet. Cratch's ears flattened. I have heard the stories. Humans are endurance predators. They can run forever. They heal from injuries that would kill others. But we Vrexians are stronger. Why did I fear him? Did you fear him? Or did you recognize him? What does that mean? Softwing Shadow floated closer, settling on the edge of Cratch's bunk. Your people are predators too. Pack hunters with hierarchies. When a human uses their command voice, they are speaking the ancient language of predators. Your instincts heard it and responded correctly. You recognized a pack leader. But he is not my pack leader, Cratch protested. He is not even Vrexian. Predator psychology has common roots across many species, the Quillith explained patiently. The signals might differ, but the meaning is the same. When a confident predator says stop, other predators listen. It is survival instinct. It kept your ancestors alive when they needed to follow strong leaders away from danger. Cratch was quiet for a long time, processing this, so I did not shame myself. My body was just following ancient instinct. Your body recognized someone with authority and responded appropriately. That is not shame, Cratch. That is wisdom. But I still snarled at Instructor Velshara, Cratch said miserably. That was wrong. The human was right to correct me. Yes, Soft Wing Shadow agreed, and you apologized. The human did not dominate you, friend. He reminded you of your own honor. There is a difference. These words settled something in Cratch's mind. He still felt embarrassed, but the crushing shame began to ease. Maybe he had not failed as badly as he thought. Meanwhile, Marcus was having his own confusing week. He noticed students acting differently around him. Some seemed nervous. Others were more respectful than before. A few avoided him entirely. This bothered Marcus. He had not come to the academy to scare people. He had come to learn about the galaxy and hopefully help build better understanding between species. Making others uncomfortable was the opposite of his goal. He tried talking to his friends about it. A human girl named Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared last name, was direct with him. You don't realize what you did, do you? She asked over lunch. I stopped a fight, Marcus said, confused. That Vrexian kid was about to attack the instructor. You stopped it by using command voice, Sarah explained. Like full alpha predator command voice. I felt it from the back of the room, and I'm human. Can you imagine what it felt like to everyone else? Marcus frowned. I just told him to sit down. Same way I'd tell my little brother when he's being a brat. Exactly. You didn't think about it. You just did it naturally. But Marcus, most species don't have that. They don't have the whole human thing where we can just project authority like we're born wearing crowns. That's ridiculous. I'm not projecting anything. Sarah laughed. That's what makes it work. You genuinely believe you have the right to tell people to behave, so they believe it too. It's human psychology mixed with Death Worlder survival instincts. We're predators who evolved to lead hunting parties and raise stubborn children. That stuff runs deep. Marcus pushed his food around on his plate, troubled by this. So everyone thinks I'm dangerous now? Not dangerous, capable. There's a difference. But yeah. You probably want to be careful about going full dad voice on people. It has more impact here than it does on Earth. That afternoon, Marcus decided to find Cratch and apologize. He had not meant to embarrass the Vrexian in front of the entire class. Looking back, he could have handled it more privately. He found Cratch in the library, studying alone at a table meant for beings twice his size. The Vrexian looked up as Marcus approached, and for a moment his fur bristled defensively. Then he forced himself to relax. Can I sit? Marcus asked, gesturing to a chair. Cratch hesitated, then nodded. It is a public space. Marcus sat down, choosing his words carefully. I wanted to say I'm sorry for embarrassing you the other day. I should have talked to you privately instead of calling you out in front of everyone. Cratch stared at him, clearly surprised. You? Apologize. But you were right. I was wrong to snarl at the instructor. Yeah, but I still could have handled it better. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. You reminded me of my younger brother when he gets all stubborn and defensive. I just reacted without thinking. That wasn't fair to you. Your brother is Vrexian? Cratch asked, confused. Marcus laughed. No, he's human. 10 years old and mean as a snake when he doesn't get his way. Mom says I was the same at that age. Cratch did not know how to feel about being compared to a human child. It should have been insulting. But Marcus's tone was warm, almost affectionate. He was not mocking Cratch. He was just being honest. Humans apologize often? Cratch asked carefully. When we mess up, yeah. Why wouldn't we? Vrexians view apology as weakness. Admitting error means admitting you are lesser. Marcus considered this. Back home we have a saying. The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. Means that real strength comes from being tested and learning from it. If you never admit mistakes, you never learn. You never get stronger. But you are strong, Cratch said, the words escaping before he could stop them. You have authority. You commanded me with just your voice. That's not strength, that's just... Marcus struggled to explain. It's just being certain about what needs to happen. My dad has it. My mom has it. All the adults I respected growing up had it. They weren't the biggest or the strongest, but when they said something needed to be done, you knew they were right, and they apologized when they made mistakes too. That's how I knew they were actually strong. This was a completely different way of thinking than anything Cratch had learned growing up. In Vrexian culture, strength was physical. Dominance was clear. Leaders were the ones who won fights. But Marcus's strength was something else. It was quiet confidence combined with genuine certainty of purpose. And underneath it, a willingness to admit imperfection. I do not know if I can think this way, Cratch admitted. That's okay. You don't have to think like a human. But maybe consider that your way and my way aren't opposites. Like, you can be strong and still apologize when you mess up. They talked for another hour, discussing their different cultures and different views of strength and honor. By the end, Cratch felt something he had not expected: respect. Not the kind of respect based on fear or dominance, but the kind based on genuine understanding. Would you? Cratch hesitated. Would you study with me sometime? I struggle with diplomacy courses. You seem to understand them naturally. Marcus smiled. Sure, and maybe you can help me with combat scenarios. I'm terrible at strategy. You commanded an entire room with one word, Cratch pointed out. That's not strategy, that's just stubbornness. Marcus grinned. My mom says I inherited the family talent for being too certain about things. As they parted ways, Cratch felt lighter than he had in days. He had not lost honor in the classroom. He had learned something important about a different kind of strength. And he had made an unlikely friend. In her office, Instructor Velshara watched the security footage of Marcus and Cratch's conversation in the library. Headmaster Quilon stood beside her, his ancient eyes thoughtful. The human continues to surprise us, Velshara said. He genuinely does not understand the effect he has on others. And that innocence makes him more effective, Quilon observed. Helia 2 months passed, and the academy settled into its normal rhythm. Students moved between classes, studied for exams, formed friendships across species lines. The incident in Velshara's classroom became a story that older students told newer ones, though the details grew more dramatic with each retelling. Cratch had changed. Anyone who knew him could see it. He still carried himself with Vrexian pride, but now he listened more than he spoke. When discussions grew heated, he often stepped back to consider different perspectives before responding. His grades improved dramatically, especially in diplomacy and cultural studies. He and Marcus had become regular study partners, an odd pair that drew curious looks from other students. The human and the Vrexian, the Death Worlder and the warrior, working side by side on homework that challenged them both. This makes no sense. Cratch growled one evening, staring at a complex negotiation scenario. The Helian people are clearly in the wrong. They broke the trade agreement first. Why should the Vortan people compromise? Because being right doesn't always matter as much as solving the problem, Marcus said, not looking up from his own work. Yeah, the Helians messed up. But if the Vortans refuse to compromise, both sides suffer. Sometimes you have to choose between being right and getting a good outcome. That seems like weakness, does it? Marcus finally looked up. Think about it this way. A strong leader can afford to compromise because they're not afraid of looking weak. A weak leader has to act tough all the time to prove themselves. Which one are you? Cratch opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. This was the human way, a simple question that cut through to the truth. I do not know yet. I am still learning. Yeah, me too. Marcus grinned. That's kind of the point of school. These conversations happened often between them. Cratch asked questions about human thinking, and Marcus asked questions about Vrexian culture. Both learned that different did not mean wrong, just different. One day in the dining hall, a new Vrexian student arrived. His name was Groth, fresh from the home world, full of the same pride and anger that Cratch had carried 2 months before. He was larger than Cratch, a year older, with scars that spoke of ritual combat training. Groth did not like the academy. He complained loudly about the soft aliens and their weak ways. He refused to use the respectful titles that students were supposed to use for instructors from other species. Several teachers tried to counsel him, but he dismissed their concerns. My people conquered 12 worlds, he announced at lunch one day, his voice carrying across the hall. We do not bow to those who have never proven themselves in battle. Cratch felt every eye in the room turn toward him. Everyone knew he was Vrexian. Everyone waited to see if he would support his species brother or condemn him. Marcus, sitting across the table, gave Cratch a subtle nod. Your choice, that nod said. I trust you. Cratch stood slowly and walked over to where Groth sat with a few other new students. May I speak with you? He asked quietly. What do you want? Groth looked him up and down dismissively. You sit with humans in Quillith. I hear stories about you. They say you shame our people by acting weak. They say I learned wisdom, Cratch corrected, keeping his voice level. And I am about to share some of that wisdom with you. Come with me. Something in his tone made Groth hesitate. It was not a request. It was not quite a command either. It was something in between, an invitation that carried weight. They moved to a quiet corner of the dining hall. Cratch stood between Groth and the rest of the room, blocking his view of the other students. You are angry, Cratch said. You feel like the Academy is trying to change you, to make you less Vrexian. I felt the same when I arrived. Then you understand why I will not submit to their soft ways, Groth said, his fur bristling. I understand that you are afraid, Cratch said calmly. Afraid that if you compromise, you lose yourself. Afraid that being diplomatic means being weak. I fear nothing. Yes, you do. And that is normal. We all fear something. The question is whether we let that fear control us. Groth's claws extended slightly. You call me a coward? No. I call you young and scared and too proud to admit either. Cratch's voice dropped lower, taking on some of the certainty he had learned from Marcus. You are acting exactly like I did 2 months ago, and I made a terrible mistake because of it. He told Groth the story of snarling at instructor Velshara. He told him about Marcus's intervention. He did not hide his shame or make excuses. He simply told the truth. The human commanded you? Groth asked, shocked. And you obeyed? My instincts obeyed before my mind could argue. Because he was right and I was wrong, and some part of me knew it. Cratch leaned closer. But here is what I learned, Groth. True strength is not about never backing down. True strength is knowing when to fight and when to listen, when to stand firm and when to apologize. Vrexians do not apologize. This Vrexian does. When I am wrong. Cratch's voice carried absolute certainty now. And right now, you are wrong. You are disrespecting instructors who are trying to help you. You are making our people look bad. And you are going to apologize to them starting tomorrow. The command hung in the air between them. Groth's body tensed, ready to fight or flee. But something in Cratch's stance, his tone, his complete certainty, made the older Vrexian pause. Why should I? Groth asked, but his voice was less confident now. Because you are better than this. Because our people are better than this. And because I am telling you to, and I am the voice of experience here, I have walked your path. It leads nowhere good. Across the dining hall, Marcus watched the confrontation with interest. He could not hear what they were saying, but he could read body language. He saw Groth's aggressive posture slowly ease. Saw Cratch standing firm but not threatening. Saw the moment when the older Vrexian's shoulders dropped in submission. Sarah Chen, sitting next to Marcus, whistled softly. Did your student just use command voice on another Vrexian? He's not my student, Marcus protested. Right, you just taught him everything he knows about authority and certainty. She grinned. Face it, Marcus. You're a good teacher. I just showed him that being strong doesn't mean being mean. He figured out the rest himself. When Cratch returned to their table, he looked tired but satisfied. That was harder than I expected, he admitted, sitting down heavily. But you did it, Marcus said, without fighting. Without even raising your voice much. Just confidence and certainty. I learned from the best, Cratch said, then added quickly. I learned from watching you. And Instructor Velshara, and Softwing Shadow, and many others. Everyone here has taught me something, this was true. Cratch had become a student in the fullest sense. Not just attending classes, but learning from everyone around him. He absorbed diplomatic techniques from Velshara, philosophical thinking from the Quillith, strategic planning from the Thraxians, and that particular blend of humility and confidence from Marcus. The next day, Groth approached 3 instructors and apologized for his disrespectful behavior. The words came out rough and uncomfortable, but they came, and afterward his behavior improved dramatically. He still struggled with some concepts, but he tried. He listened. Instructor Velshara took note of this development. In a staff meeting, she presented it to the other teachers. Cratch has learned to lead, she said, colors cycling through proud purples and golds, not through dominance, but through earned respect. He combined Vrexian strength with human certainty and created something new. Something better. Headmaster Keelan nodded slowly. The human influenced the Vrexian, who then influenced another Vrexian. This is how culture spreads. This is how understanding grows. Should we formalize this? Asked Mordak the Thraxian. Create a peer mentorship program? Not yet, Kelon decided. What makes this effective is that it is organic, natural. If we try to force it into a program, we might kill the very thing that makes it work. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his studies, mostly unaware of the ripples he had created. He helped students when they asked, offered advice when it seemed needed, and generally tried to be a good friend and classmate. But others noticed. They saw how students who spent time with Marcus began to carry themselves differently. More confident but less arrogant. More certain but more willing to listen. It was not that Marcus was deliberately teaching them anything. It was that his way of being in the world was contagious. One evening, Marcus and Cratch sat in the observation lounge watching stars drift past the windows. They had finished their homework and were just enjoying the quiet. Thank you, Cratch said suddenly. For what? For seeing me as more than my mistakes. For believing I could be better. Cratch's tail swished slowly, a sign of contentment. I was so angry when I arrived here. I thought being strong meant never bending, never compromising, never admitting weakness, and now I think real strength is choosing when to bend and when to stand firm. Knowing the difference. That is what you showed me. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You know what's funny? I'm learning from you too. You've taught me that different cultures have different kinds of strength, that my way isn't the only way, just one way among many. They sat in comfortable silence, two young beings from warrior species finding peace in understanding. Outside the window. 6 months after the incident that had changed everything, the Academy published a new course in its catalog. Cross-species leadership psychology appeared as an elective, taught by a team that included instructor Velshara, headmaster Quilon, and several guest lecturers from different species. The course examined something they called the human factor, the way human presence and communication affected mixed species groups. It was taught carefully without suggesting humans were superior. Just different, with specific traits that had emerged from their dangerous world. Students found it fascinating. Many came to understand their own instincts better by studying how humans triggered or bypassed those instincts. The course became one of the Academy's most popular offerings. Marcus knew about the course but had not taken it. Feels weird to study myself, he told Cratch. Like being the subject of my own homework. You should sit in on one class at least, Cratch encouraged. They talk about you specifically. The incident with me, how you intervened. They talk about me. Marcus looked uncomfortable. That's embarrassing. It is not meant to embarrass. It is meant to teach. You did something important, Marcus. You helped me become better. Why should others not learn from that? So Marcus attended one session, sitting in the back while Velshara discussed predator psychology and pack dynamics. It was strange hearing his actions analyzed and explained, but he also learned things about himself he had not fully understood. I really didn't know what I was doing, he admitted to Cratch afterward. I just reacted. That is what made it work, Cratch said. You were genuine. If you had been calculating, trying to manipulate, it would have failed. But you simply knew what needed to happen and made it happen. That certainty is what others respond to. The lessons spread beyond the Academy. Other institutions requested information about integrating human students into mixed species environments. The Concordance diplomatic corps started studying human negotiation techniques. Slowly, humanity's reputation shifted from dangerous deathworlders to natural mediators, but the real test came during a crisis that nobody expected. A trade dispute between two aggressive species, the Kelthar and the Mordrun, had been growing worse for months. Both species were prideful warriors. Both refused to back down. The situation had escalated to the point where war seemed inevitable. The Concordance sent negotiators, but they failed. The Kelthar and Mordrun ambassadors met in a secured station to try one last time, but the meeting went badly from the start. Within hours, insults were flying. Old grudges were aired. Threats were made. Headmaster Quilon made an unconventional decision. He sent students. You want us to negotiate a peace treaty? Marcus asked, shocked when Quilon called him and Cratch to his office. No. I want you to observe, Quilon said carefully. The senior diplomats are deadlocked. Sometimes fresh perspectives help. You will watch, listen, and report back on what you see. Nothing more. Marcus and Cratch exchanged glances. They both knew this was more than simple observation. But they also trusted Keelan's judgment. The negotiation station was tense when they arrived. Armed guards from both species stood at doorways, watching each other with open hostility. Diplomats huddled in separate rooms, unwilling to share even common spaces. The actual negotiation chamber was worse. The Kelthar ambassador, a massive being covered in natural armor plates, sat on one side of a long table. The Mordran ambassador, equally large but built more like an insect, sat opposite. Between them, a human diplomat named Ambassador Chen, no relation to Marcus, though the coincidence was noted, tried desperately to find common ground. "We cannot accept your terms," the Kelthar ambassador said, his voice like grinding stone. "You broke the original agreement. You owe us compensation." "We broke nothing." The Mordran clicked his mandibles together aggressively. "Your interpretation of the agreement is self-serving and false. We owe you nothing." "Then we have nothing further to discuss." The Kelthar stood, his bulk making the table seem small. "Sit down, coward," the Mordran hissed. "Running away is what your species does best." The Kelthar's hand moved to his weapon. Guards on both sides tensed. Ambassador Chen raised her hands, trying to calm everyone, but her voice was lost in the rising anger. Marcus and Cratch watched from the observation area, behind a one-way window that let them see without being seen. They were supposed to just watch, take notes, learn. But Marcus saw the Kelthar's hand on his weapon and recognized the moment. Everything was about to explode. People were about to die over pride and stubbornness and the inability to admit that maybe both sides had valid points. "I have to do something," Marcus said. "We were told to observe only," Cratch reminded him. "Yeah, well, I was also taught not to let people hurt each other when I can prevent it." Marcus was already moving toward the door. Cratch hesitated for only a moment, then followed. "Then we do it together." They entered the negotiation chamber through a side door. Every eye turned to them. 2 students, 1 human and 1 Vrexian, walking into a room full of the galaxy's most powerful diplomats and warriors. Ambassador Chen looked startled. "What are you doing here?" But Marcus was not looking at her. He was looking at the 2 ambassadors, both still poised for violence. He walked to the center of the room between them and stood there with that same calm certainty he had shown in Velshara's classroom. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Breathe." It was the command voice, unmistakable and undeniable. Both ambassadors felt it like a physical force. Their angry postures eased slightly. Their breathing, which had been fast and aggressive, slowed. The Kelthar ambassador found his hand moving away from his weapon. The Mordran ambassador's mandibles stopped clicking. Both looked at this human student with a mixture of confusion and something like respect. Marcus took a breath himself, then continued speaking. "I've been watching for 2 hours. You both want the same thing, a fair trade agreement that respects both your peoples. But you're so busy defending your pride that you can't see the solution right in front of you." "How dare you?" the Kelthar began, but his protest lacked heat. "I dare because someone has to," Marcus said simply, "and because I'm just a student, so if I say something stupid, you can laugh it off and blame it on youth. But here's what I see, you're both right, and you're both wrong. And you're so focused on who started the problem that you're ignoring how to fix it." Cratch stepped forward, standing beside Marcus. "We understand pride," he said, his voice carrying the authority he had learned. "I am Vrexian. We invented pride. But I learned something at the academy. Being right is less important than doing right. Winning an argument is less important than solving the problem." The 2 ambassadors looked at each other, then at these young beings who had somehow stopped their confrontation cold. "We have been negotiating for months," the Mordran said, his tone less hostile now. "What solution do you see that we have missed?" "You're stuck on compensation," Marcus said. "One of you thinks you're owed something, the other thinks they owe nothing. But compensation is backward-looking. What if instead you focused on forward-looking benefits? What if both sides get something better than you had before, making the past argument irrelevant?" Ambassador Chen, who had been silent with shock, suddenly spoke up. "That's actually brilliant. Gentlemen, if we restructure the agreement to include new trade routes and resource sharing, both your peoples profit more than under the old agreement. The question of who broke what becomes meaningless." The Kelthar ambassador sat down slowly, his massive frame settling into his chair. The Mordran did the same. For the first time in hours, they looked at each other without hostility. They looked thoughtful. This would require detailed planning, the Kelthar said carefully. Which we can provide, Ambassador Chen said quickly, sensing the shift. Give us 3 days to draw up proposals. Then we reconvene with open minds. Both ambassadors agreed. The meeting ended without violence, without further threats, with something neither side had expected. Hope. As they left the chamber, Ambassador Chen pulled Marcus and Cratch aside. What you did was incredibly risky, she said, but also incredibly brave. And effective. Where did you learn to negotiate like that? We didn't negotiate, Marcus said. We just reminded them why they were there. Sometimes people get so lost in fighting that they forget what they're fighting about. Wisdom beyond your years, the ambassador said warmly. Both of you. The Concordance could use more diplomats like you. 3 days later, a new agreement was signed. Both the Kelthar and Mordrin people celebrated it as a victory. War was averted. Trade increased. And 2 student observers became minor legends in diplomatic circles. Years passed. Marcus and Cratch graduated from the academy with high honors. Both joined the Concordance Diplomatic Corps, working as a team. Their reputation grew, the human-Rexian partnership that could stop conflicts before they started. They were not perfect. They failed sometimes, but they succeeded more often than not, and their methods began spreading throughout the Concordance. Marcus trained other humans to understand their effect on other species. To use their natural authority responsibly and carefully, Cratch trained Rexians to combine their strength with diplomacy, to see honor in peace as well as war.